Coming up next on Arizona Horizon's Journalist Roundtable, a look at debates from this week, including the gubernatorial and attorney general debates. And Governor Brewer is adamant about paying schools what they're due. The Journalist Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalist Roundtable. I'm Steve Goldstein in for Ted Simons. Joining us tonight, Mary Jo Pitzel of the Arizona Republic, Mike Sunnix of the Phoenix Business Journal, and Jim Small of the Arizona Capital Times. Arizona Horizon played host to two debates for state office this week. We'll start with a look at the Attorney General debate between Mark Brnovich and Felicia Rodolini. Mary Jo, it got pretty nasty. Did you expect that?
I did expect it to be pretty tough. It reminds me of the Felicia Rodolini who ran 4 years ago. She is out of the blocks. She's sort of in your face. She's got her points that she's going to make. It might help play into a narrative of being a tough prosecutor. And she went after Brnovich right away on his credentials for the office, and he responded in kind.
Yeah, Jim, some critics said it was too much about what the other person lacks as opposed to what the candidate, him or herself, brings.
Oh, that was definitely, I mean, each one really took pains to point out where the other was deficient and why they shouldn't be elected to the office. They didn't spend nearly as much time, I don't think, talking up their own credentials, but you know, the way that's been the tone of this race, I think, really since the end of the primary. And frankly, I think for Felicia Rodolini, it was going to be the tone of the race, regardless of whether she was facing Mark Brnovich or Tom Horn. And you know, like Mary Jo said, I mean, that was kind of the race she ran 4 years ago. It was a similar kind of tactics in both the primary and the general for her last year. And you know, so it's not really too surprising, I don't think, that both of them were on the offensive and were really throwing some haymakers.
She spent basically 4 years getting ready to run against Tom Horn and all his troubles, and everything was set up for her. This was totally set up for, I think, before the primary, before Brnovich got in, people thought Rodolini was the most likely Democrat to win, and that's all changed now. It's a whole new playbook. Brnovich beat Horn, and that kind of took all her thunder against Horn away, but she has tried to transfer that into her attacks on Brnovich.
Mary Jo, over the years we've all talked about negative campaigning and whether it works or not. When both candidates are going negative, what can they take hold of? And what are the credentials these two bring that voters should focus on?
Well, I guess they could try to read independent media reports. They could read the candidates' websites, which tend to talk a little bit more about issues if you want to get into that level of research, which, you know, voters should. But other than that, you know, it's how credible is the attack? Does it ring true? How does the target of it respond to that, and what kind of response do they give back?
I thought it was interesting when Brnovich kept playing up his background as a criminal prosecutor. Rodolini pointed out that the Attorney General's office doesn't usually handle those cases, but do voters know that? Voters think of prosecutors as law and order and television, what we see in movies, and going in the courtroom and going after gangsters and drug cartels. And she rightly said, well, that you're running for county attorney, but maybe voters will look at that as, oh, he's the prosecutor, he has that experience. And when Republicans cast things in a law and order light, they do better with voters, especially in this state and in the Phoenix area.
And Jim, what about that?
No, I think he's definitely right. I mean, they've both got ample experience as prosecutors, but, you know, Brnovich's side is on the criminal side, and Felicia Rodolini was on the civil side, and worked in, both of them have experience at the AG's office, but you know, Felicia worked there for a number of years in kind of the financial crimes area, and then that part of the civil world.
But to Mike's point about, you know, voters probably don't know that that criminal cases tend to be the domain of the county attorneys. So if you look at this as a teachable moment, you know, another one of the big points of argument of these two candidates was, you know, criminal prosecuting trial experience. And again, the Attorney General, him or herself, really doesn't do many trials. I mean, they'll trot them out for the big ones, you know, but if you want a chance to go before the Supreme Court, U.S. or Arizona. But, you know, most of the trial work is done by the Assistant Attorney General that staff that office.
Yeah, in a way, I mean, this is like several other offices that we have statewide that are elected. I mean, your job is basically to run an office in a lot of ways. I mean, you're managing the state's law firm. I mean, that's what you're being elected as, like the managing partner of a law firm. So, yeah, you know, Mary Jo's right. I mean, the actual courtroom experience may not be it's not really high on the list. Maybe it shouldn't be high on the list of priorities for voters.
Mike, what strikes me, though, is if we think about big names who really made bigger names for themselves, Grant Woods, Janet Napolitano, Tom Horn, they all did slightly different things with this office. So regardless of what voters think the office is, it can be shaped, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I thought you saw during Goddard, he went more after some of the mortgage crimes and stuff. Obviously, Tom Horne spent a lot of time with his campaign, on his campaign staff there, but you can make your name and you can take this in different directions. And I don't think voters, I think voters look at, oh, wow, you're a criminal prosecutor and you do that, and they still view it that way. And I think Rodolini has a lot of civil experience. That might be a little harder to explain to voters on this type of race when they're not looking at it as much as maybe the governor's race and other contests.
Mary Jo, what can you tell us about this anti-Brnovich ad becoming very controversial?
Yeah, this is an ad that Rodolini's campaign has paid for, and it alleges that he lobbied against a bill that would have prevented the private prisons from bringing in prisoners from out of state. And look what happens. That bill passes, and we have out-of-state. We have a prison breakout in Kingman, and these guys get out and they murder a couple. And this is what happens when you go down that path of private prisons. The problem is, and as Brnovich is alleging in a threatened lawsuit now today, is that the time frame is all messed up, and the couple, the escapees. Committed their crime in Arizona. They weren't from out of state, so it sort of undercuts that part of the argument.
The reason they don't like that ad is because this is very effective ad. Democrats bring up the private prison thing all the time. It came up in the Brewer race against Goddard. Voters don't care about private prisons. They care about when private prisons have corruption or mismanagement. This was a huge case that people can relate to and understand. These people escaped from Kingman, killed somebody. You're linking Brnovich somehow to this indirectly. That can resonate with voters much more than whether a contract should go to CCA or what kind of company CCA is. So this is a really effective ad, and that's why you're seeing the kind of reaction from the Brnovich campaign.
Another Arizona Horizon debate this week, Jim, had to do with the gubernatorial candidates, also hearing from Messrs. Hess and Mueller, but we're focused on Ducey and Duval. Did we learn anything special this week's debate that we hadn't learned from the two of them before? Have they sort of settled into a pattern?
They have definitely settled into a pattern. I mean, they both have their talking points, and they generally stay, I think pretty well confined to them, both, on the talking about their own attributes and talking about the shortcomings of their opponent. The one thing that was interesting to me that came out of that debate was Doug Ducey conceded basically when it comes to Medicaid expansion. There's been a lot of push to to repeal this and talk about what would happen after Governor Brewer is gone and whether the next executive office will get rid of that. And he said, well, probably not for the first couple of years because it doesn't make financial sense to, because the feds are paying for all of it right now, and maybe it's something to take a look at down the road. But right away, he kind of indicated that he would reject any attempts to repeal it until that federal match goes away or becomes a lot less.
And that seems to not quite fit with what he was saying during the primary, when the primary was a lot about Medicaid expansion and immigration, which we haven't heard a lot about in the general, by the way, on immigration. So I'm wondering how some of those Tea Party types who were, like Al Melvin, who folded his tent and endorsed Mr. Ducey, how they feel with him saying, well, we're going to live with this for a couple of years.
Mike, does this steal some of Duval's thunder?
A little bit. Doug's had very nuanced answers to a lot of questions, both in the primary and the general. And as a candidate, you can say, well, he's pretty disciplined. He's been able to kind of maneuver around these things to try to keep the folks in the middle and the folks on the right happy. And that's what this shows, and what the debate show, I thought, was the race is still about Ducey, about somebody being able to beat Ducey. That was what the primary was about, and that's Fred's challenge here, is to chip away at what is kind of perceived as Ducey as this front runner, even though the polls have shown that the race pretty close.
I'm coming back to strengths and weaknesses, Mary Jo, like I discussed with the Attorney General candidates. What does Fred Duval have to do, considering the registration disadvantage he has, to stand out? Many people would say, he's a solid person, he's an Arizonan, but he's never won for an elected office. What does he have to do to really get people sparking in the next couple of weeks? Can he do it?
I don't know if he can do it. That's sort of up for others to decide. I think there's a lot of people who are still trying to figure out who is Fred Duval in terms of the whole, introducing yourself to voters, although it's a little late to do that, and he's been defined by being the anti-Ducey. And the thing that struck me about the debate on Monday is that Ducey's taking a page like straight out of Ronald Reagan. He's selling optimism and sunshine, and I'm not going to speak ill. I'm not part of this tear down Arizona crowd. And Duval, as as a challenger, pretty much, has to sort of be in that position of attacking, which makes him seem a little more negative. So I don't know if he can turn that and become Mr. Sunshine himself as well.
I think it's more of an undercurrent that can propel Fred in this race. The undercurrent that the Republicans have been in charge, they've embarrassed the state with 1070, with 1062. The economy hasn't turned around with these tax cuts and the Commerce Authority and everything that Brewer and the business folks pushed. But I think the image of the state, us being on the Daily Show all the time, there is that undercurrent of folks out there, you talk to more moderate folks in the business community, that are tired of that, and you could see a Democratic governor, Fred, as a stopgap against the legislature for that. Scott Smith kind of touched upon that in the primary, but you don't see politicians, candidates willing to go that far, and that where the state's a laughingstock, and I'm going to turn it around. So it's more measured. But I think that undercurrent might be there with some voters. The problem is you need younger voters, you need Hispanics to turn out in an off-year election. All the national trends are for the Republicans. The world events aren't really helping bring attention to statewide races. Everybody's focused on Ebola and the NFL and ISIS, and so it's hard, making it hard for Fred to define himself and introduce himself to the voters.
And the greater business community, Jim, seems to like Doug Ducey pretty well.
Oh, very much so.
What about the primary? There was so much speculation about, okay, Duval not having a primary opponent, good or bad? Ultimately, has it made it so people don't quite know him as well?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a negative for him. I mean, we had this very protracted Republican primary, crowded fields, 6, 7 people, and it people were paying attention to it, and there was a constant churn of stories, and I'm sure Mike and Mary Jo got the same thing, where the Duval campaign's like, hey, can you guys write about? We put out an announcement. Can you write about this? Can we get some attention? And it's tough to find a reason to, in July, when there's a heated Republican primary, to write about the guy on the Democratic side who's running by himself, which means in just about any coverage of it, it's always an afterthought. It's at the very bottom of the story that says, oh yeah, and by the way, whoever wins faces Fred Duval. And so it's tough to get that attention. Even if there had been a token opposition in that race, there would have been an opportunity for him and his campaign to get some visibility and at least get in front of some voters and kind of get the name out there, and instead of kind of being the third wheel or the eighth wheel, as it were, in a lot of these Republican gubernatorial forums.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And also, when you look at the really relatively short time span between the end of the beginning of the general election cycle and when people start to vote, which is next week, that really gives you a very short period of time within which to have two major candidates, clash. Give people a chance to compare and contrast.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, Doug Ducey went on TV in like April or May. So, you go from April or May down to November. I mean, that's 6 months of him being on TV, solid. By the time people are casting their early ballots, Fred Duval went on the air in early September. It's really tough to kind of make up that ground and make up that name ID. And Mary Jo's right. And when you have such a short turnaround, that name ID is really huge, and it's hard to overcome that gap.
Signature issue either. Fred has talked about no more cuts to education, and then Ducey just says, well, I like schools and education too. There's not this big dividing space between them. Again, we've had people go after Ducey on Cold Stone, but there's never been a smoking gun there that's been able to stick. This is the third contest where we've had people bring up the franchisees and some of the issues with Cold Stone, but it's kind of so much in the weeds and complicated that there's nothing where Ducey was accused of malfeasance or he was fired or anything like that, and generally Cold Stone still has a good image among folks. There's divide. I think that there's contrast, but there's nothing that's defined the race in terms of issues.
Yeah, I disagree a little bit, because I think education, they have very different positions on it. I mean, Duval's wrapped himself around education and no more cuts, and we will fund this court mandate, right away, and no more lawsuits. Let's get that over with. Whereas Ducey's been more vague. I mean, he talks about wanting to get more money into the classroom and redoing the school finance formula, things like that, which will take time. And he doesn't necessarily suggest that there has to be money to fund that court mandate, which I still can't get my head around, because the court said you got to pay, and there's got to be money. Duval has a plan a concrete plan for 1 year. Ducey is yet to give us one. So there's a, I think that's a point of distinction. And also there seems to be some confusion in the public mind over funding waiting lists and what that means. But
I think
it's a little
there's
in the weeds.
distinctions, but I think both of those issues are in the weeds for most people. I don't think your average voters are paying that much attention to the lawsuit. Duval has leverage on where the state ranks 49th or 50th in education and dropout rates and stuff. I'm going to boost it. I'm going to do it. That's where he has. But I think the lawsuit thing is a little inside politics. It's more than shadow.
I mean, people who've got kids in school, they pay attention to what's happening with their schools. We've got a whole bunch of school districts that have bond and override elections on November 4th. So they're getting the word out. Scottsdale's trying for the third time in a row to get a budget override. So there is an awareness, I think, among at least that school age population or parents of school age kids that that's something's lacking.
And a lot of those bond overrides have lost because people don't want to spend more money on education.
Mike, you mentioned no smoking gun, but Mary Jo, you had quite a piece in the Republic about Doug Ducey and the Koch brothers. Is that a smoking gun? Give us some background.
Well, this was a audio that was pulled up from a meeting, a summit that the Koch brothers held back in June, where they sort of parade in front of deep-pocketed donors, a lot of potential candidates for Senate and governorships. And Ducey was there, and he spoke very flatteringly, of course, of the crowd, and said, you're known by the company you keep, and talked about his bio and sort of talked up his campaign. And obviously, it's a pitch to get some funding. For people that are suspicious of, how are the Kochs funneling money to candidates, and they do that in there's a lot of money there, and it's dark money because the donors are not named. That raises some suspicion. Will this be an issue? I don't know.
Okay, Jim.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's Mary Jo kind of alluded to it. I don't know. It's terribly surprising that he went before a group of conservative people with a lot of money as a conservative Republican and spoke well of their group and what they're trying to do, getting conservatives elected to office. I mean, that seems kind of, dog bites man-ish a little bit.
What about Chris Christie's appearance earlier this week? Is anyone going to think that's a big deal? I mean, Chris Christie is a big deal in many ways, but in terms of his impact here?
I think Chris Christie's impact here is felt through the RGA, through the Republican Governors Association, which he's the head of, and they've spent very heavily in favor of Doug Ducey, and I think he came out here which he's doing across the country, going across the country, appearing with these Republican candidates. I don't know if it's going to hurt or help. I think really what helps Doug Ducey with regard to that is just the money that's coming in to help back him and to run ads attacking Duval. And really those ads, I think, by the RGA defined Duval before he ever got a chance to tell voters who he was.
Mike, I want to ask one quick question in a general polling sense. We've talked about the AG race, we talked about the gubernatorial race. Have you seen any polls, not necessarily believe them, but give us an idea of what you're seeing in terms of who's leaning which way, even in the Secretary of State's race? Are we seeing things that seem solid, that seem consistent as far as polling?
There's little polling, if none. Little independent polling. The polls that have been out there, people have kind of questioned. They show the governor's race tight. A lot of people think that Ducey has the advantage there, but the polls that have been out there have shown it pretty close. A lot of people think Goddard is kind of favored right now over Reagan, but the other races, there's little polling at all. People are just looking at the tea leaves of voter registration hedges for the Republicans, who turns out in midterm elections, older voters, high efficacy voters, the national trend that kind of favors the GOP. But a lot of people still think we could see kind of a split ticket in terms of kind of who wins in all these statewide races.
Jim, Arizona is back to, I guess, starting to date the Supreme Court again. Now that we've had a little bit of a slow time, but taking up the independent redistricting case. Give us a little background on that. Yeah,
so this is a case that was brought by the legislature a couple of years ago after the IRC finished drawing its maps in the beginning of 2011. The legislature decided to file a lawsuit challenging under the Elections Clause of the Constitution, which basically says that state legislatures are tasked with setting the manner in which congressional elections are held. That includes drawing the districts. Their argument is basically that means legislature means legislature. It's this bicameral body, the House and the Senate, and that's who gets to do this. Arizona's Constitution gives legislative authority to the voters. Voters in 2000 approved the Independent Redistricting Commission, and the argument so far, and one that was held up by the first court panel that heard this issue, was that no, legislature doesn't just mean the body of elected officials. It also means, in states where it's allowed, the authority of the people. And so that's really what's going to go before the court. It's an interesting case. There is very little case law in this area. There's 2 or 3 cases that are kind of sort of deal with this area. All of them seem to point towards allowing the IRC, giving them this authority, but there's nothing on point. And certainly, this Supreme Court has certainly shown a willingness to, even if there is some case law that it points you in one direction, of interpreting things differently and looking at maybe a more originalistic view of the U.S. Constitution, in which case you'd be talking about legislature, not initiative process.
And the reason there's not a lot of case law is that it's, in most states, it is the legislature with the capital L that draws the political boundary lines. Arizona's got an independent commission, California does, there might be another state or 2 out there. But so this challenge could resonate all throughout. And it's a fight over who gets to draw the lines. Regardless of what happens, it has no effect on next month's elections. Those lines are drawn and candidates are running. But we could see a new map in 2016.
And repercussions there?
Oh, well, for a Republican legislator that hates trial lawyers so much, they seem to sue people a lot. And basically, this is sour grapes because they appointed the wrong independent person to chair the committee, and there was essentially three Democrats on there, and they're still upset about that. But it does have kind of big picture impacts on other states. The initiative process, what rights go to voters, what rights go to lawmakers. And again, they're very consistent at the state capitol, is they hate voter mandates and they hate what the voters approve, so they always try to fight that.
It's worth pointing out, too, that one of the things the Supreme Court said when it said it would hear the case was that it also wants to talk about, consider the issue of whether the legislature even has standing to sue. And part of that is no doubt related to the fact that we're now 14 years past when voters approved this. The Republican legislature didn't have a problem with the IRC. They didn't like the IRC the first go around, but they really kind of politically controlled that process and ended up with maps that were favorable to them, and so there wasn't really a whole lot of complaining about it, and they certainly didn't sue and they didn't raise this argument back then, but they did now, as Mike said, they lost the IRC process. They kind of ended up with the short end of the stick, and so now they brought this lawsuit, and one of the arguments from the IRC has been, well, you guys should have made this argument a decade ago, not now.
And there's nothing stopping them from running another ballot initiative, changing the process. If they'd like to do that and take it to the voters, they can do that too, obviously, if they lose this case.
Well, Jim, because I love the politics of all these things, again, I'm going to stress political repercussions. Let's say, we're good reporters here, don't like to speculate, but let's say things change and this power is taken away from the independent commission. How much does that send 2016 perhaps into Kaflooey?
Oh, it would be it would be fun to cover. I'll tell you that. You'd have totally new maps. This 5-4 split you have right now with Democrats controlling the House delegation, I think, would be a thing of the past. The question would be, how do they assign Democratic voters? How many safe districts do they give the Democrats? Do they give them just 2 districts and make the rest all Republican? Mm-hmm. Do they try to make any competitive districts, any swing districts? Mm-hmm. Right now, we've got 3 ostensible swing districts out of 9. I don't know that you would see that if you were to move forward with a map drawn by Republican legislators.
I think those maps are probably already drawn, so they can they're ready to go.
Well, word had it that House Speaker Randy Tobin he said he had a map drawn, which would have been really handy this time because he doesn't live in the district for which he's now running for Congress.
And the other thing that's interesting about that is there's a bunch of restrictions on how the IRC has to draw its maps and things it has to consider. The legislature would be under they would have no reason to follow those rules. They could draw them to help out themselves, draw themselves into favorable districts.
Yeah, and I should point out, this whole argument affects only the congressional lines, not the legislative lines. That the authority of the independent commission to draw those lines has not been challenged.
Because they like those.
No, they don't like them, but they don't doubt the authority. They don't like the manner in which they did that, and that's another lawsuit.
Oh yeah, even if the Republicans, the legislature, win this, we'll see a whole bunch of lawsuits challenging anything they do. This goes on in all kinds of states, but there's no perfect way to draw the lines is the problem.
Now, Mike, let's wrap up with the newly named Arizona Coyotes. People really thought they might be settling it for a while. Now we're hearing, as of yesterday, they might be up for sale? Yeah,
there was a story in the New York Post, and this has kind of been floating around in local media about a hedge fund manager from Philadelphia who wanted to buy the Islanders and the New Jersey Devils, didn't do that. Now he might buy a 51% stake in the hockey team. And Glendale, which gave him kind of a nice subsidy to help make the deal go through with this current ownership group, they're not really sure yet if this changes the deal at all. They have to go back and do another one. So we're still seeing what happens. But is this a good thing? Do you have more money coming in? Is this a bad thing because they're struggling still? Remains to be seen.
Jim, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think on the whole, certainly the team and folks in the league are spinning this as a good thing. As look, this is an infusion of cash into a team that really has struggled to have money for the past, well, ever, really, since they've been here. They've never been on firm financial ground. This would, basically double the value of the team, and they're not buying it from the owners. None of the current owners are walking away. It's basically just adding money into the club.
Mary Jo, Jim, Mike, thanks for the conversation. Monday on Arizona Horizon, learn everything you need to know about voting from the Maricopa County Recorder. And renowned ASU physicist Lawrence Krauss joins us with the latest science news. Tuesday, a clean elections debate with the candidates for Secretary of State. Wednesday, another debate, this time with candidates for Congressional District 7. Thursday, a preview of the Supreme Court's upcoming session. And Friday, it's another edition of the Journalist Roundtable. That's all for tonight. I'm Steve Goldstein. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.